Okay, I am Jessica Knutson. I'm the Secondary Transition Coordinator with Northern Lights Special Ed Cooperative. And this is our 10th Tuesday Transition Talks at 12 session. This webinar series that we have put on is an interagency effort between Northern Lights Interagency Council and the Interagency Coordinating Council of Duluth for our Area 14 school district parents. In preparing your child for life after high school, today's topic is about attaining and navigating county supports, and it is presented by Amy Potter and Megan McArthur, both who are from St. Louis County. If you have any questions or comments during this time, you can feel free to unmute yourself and speak or add it in the chat box. And right now I will turn it over to Amy and Megan. Thank you.
Thanks, Jess. Yeah, my name is Amy Potter, and I'm a case manager in the Intellectual Disabilities Unit with St. Louis County, and I'm a transition age case manager working with 16 to 24-year-olds. And
I'm Megan McArthur. I do the same as Miss Amy here as a transition case manager through St. Louis County. So we kind of specialize in working with teenagers and helping them transition into adulthood and all the things that go along with that. So I think Amy will get us started here on the basics of county services.
Yeah, so like we kind of already said, we both work in the Intellectual Disabilities Unit with St. Louis County. Oh, and I should say too, these services are pretty similar across counties too, because I know there might be parents from other counties attending, and for the most part, it's all pretty similar for eligibility and services that are available, with maybe a couple minor differences. So another term that our position is often referred to as is Rule 185. That just means the same thing as intellectual disabilities. But sometimes if you're new to county services, it's good to use that term too, because like intake workers might be familiar with that term. So yeah, case management services for 16 to 24-year-olds. This service is available for people of any age, so starting as a baby up until people in like older age, but Megan and I both specialize, like she said, in just transition case management. So the teenagers into like young adults. A good thing to know for some people that are new to county services and thinking it might just be a lot to take on is a lot of new cases we get for young people that are still in high school, haven't graduated, and maybe don't need a lot of services yet. We really just minimally need to meet with people twice a year to check in. And that is kind of common when kids are younger. And as they get older and closer to graduation, more services are needed and transition stuff is needed. And then we end up meeting a lot more often. So that's kind of good to know. And really what we do is help to identify a person's needs, any needs related to their disability, and to help them accomplish their goals, and in areas like social, medical, educational, and lots of other miscellaneous areas, just to get people the supports and services that they need in tons of different areas. Megan will later talk about more specifically some of the duties of a case manager. Eligibility for services in specifically the intellectual disability unit. The person would need to have a current, either a psychological evaluation or a full school evaluation within the last year, and whichever evaluation is being used, there would need to be a full IQ testing and then adaptive behavior testing. And from that testing, it does need to be documented that the person has either an intellectual disability or a related condition. And I'll go into those definitions here. So a person qualifies with an intellectual disability if their IQ is 70 or below. They would need to have some substantial limitations in functioning and kind of just require some assistance to learn new skills or perform different tasks throughout the day. Deficits in adaptive behavior, I will go into that definition here in a minute. The symptoms need to have been present before the person turned 22, and then a person with Down syndrome is automatically eligible for our services. So I mentioned a related condition. What that really means is some people come to our unit who have an IQ that's slightly above 70, and they can still qualify if they have a certain diagnosis. Some of the common ones here listed are like cerebral palsy, epilepsy, autism, Prader-Willi, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, and there's lots of other diagnoses that it could be as well. But basically what it means is the person's IQ is above 70, but they still have limitations in their functioning that fall like below a 70 in their adaptive behavior scores. So that could be with self-care, like limitations with self-care, communication, learning, mobility, self-direction, just being able to like direct their own services and get the help they need, or being able to live independently. And again, these limitations need to have been occurring before age 22 and be expected to occur indefinitely. And then just a couple more definitions of terms that I mentioned earlier. The deficits in adaptive behavior, again, is just like a significant limitation in a person's ability to learn new things or be independent or interact kind of like on a same level as like their same aged peers. And that needs to be documented in some sort of evaluation. Substantial functional limitations. I kind of already said that, but again, like a long-term inability to perform daily activities or tasks that someone would need to be able to do to live independently. Again, documented in an evaluation. And then Megan will talk about MnCHOICES assessments.
So MnCHOICES assessment is pretty much your entry point for county services. We're talking specifically today about the intellectual disabilities unit, but the MnCHOICES assessment is also your entryway into other services, whether it's children's services with mental health, etc. So MnCHOICES assessment completed pretty much the same by all counties. Difference might be, we'll show you in a slide ahead here, that there's a little bit different ways to get a hold of each county, but you call an intake, MnCHOICES assessment line, request an assessment, and what you end up getting is a person certified in MnCHOICES assessments to ideally in person sit down and do a pretty thorough assessment looking at a whole variety of domains in life, whether it's transportation, housing, employment, independent living skills. What areas of needs are there? What kind of supports are there that can help with it? Through this assessment, there is a determination of eligibility. This is how people become eligible for waivers. You need to complete this just to be eligible for the Rule 185 case management that Amy had mentioned. I think we could probably, it starts the support planning process. So once you have the MnCHOICES assessment completed, that assessor will create kind of a really basic plan, a community support plan, we call it. It doesn't start any services. It just pretty much gives recommendations for moving forward in your services. All right, so as Amy had mentioned a bit about services available specifically through us with Rule 185 case management in the transition age is, like Amy mentioned, we tend to get a lot more hands-on during this time. There's a lot of changes in life. We're looking at graduation, and so it's for families and individuals we support to really drive the level of involvement that we do have with their case. So that can be us attending IEP meetings, talking with their school supports. It can be assisting with getting additional services, whether it's additional county benefits or if it's getting going on SSI, determining kind of guardianship roles. And then just basic life things. If it's, do we need services in place to be able to help increase your independent living skills, or services that might be in place for the rest of your life to support with those needs, because the individual might not have that ability coordinating with other providers, educating families and individuals about other services that are out there, and making those referrals. This is all things that parents can do too, and we can just kind of educate the families about it. Again, that's kind of that level of involvement a family chooses. It's looking into housing, post-secondary options, what kind of transportation might need to get in place to be able to go to school after you're out of high school and don't have those things all built in for you, or to go to work. Connecting people to social, recreational things that are out there. And again, problem solving. Is there a support that needs to be there for that to be a safe thing to do? Is there transportation? So kind of all encompassing, what are your goals? What are your interests? And how can we help get that moving for you with a support or just some information? Then we have some other ones that are, I guess what I probably could have hit on there. Amy, you were going to hit on waivers a little more, but there's different avenues to getting different services. So there's waivers that Amy will talk about here in a minute, but some that don't require any of that. So when you are eligible for Rule 185 case management, and that MnCHOICE assessment is completed, they also give recommendations for things like PCA services, personal care assistance. That's more hands-on for personal needs, typically in a house. Family support grant. And there's also a CSG, it's another grant like that. Those get determined by your MnCHOICE assessment as well. But those both work in a similar fashion, that essentially the family kind of gets like a pool of money. It's driven by your rating for PCA, and they can use that to be a little bit more creative about the services. Instead of just a straight PCA company coming in, it can be maybe a family friend that's coming in and completing it, or if it's just getting maybe some respite care, or maybe a family just wants some certain equipment that would really help at the house. Those kinds of things can happen through these grants without actually being on a waiver. Looks like they also cover some medical costs under FSG, which is neat if it's not covered by MA. Carleton County specifically has this respite grant as well that's available to children with disabilities. And it's limited to just $500 a year, but it's mainly to just give families a little break when necessary.
So Megan mentioned waivers, and when a person is on a waiver, then they get access to a whole nother kind of menu of services. And so services delivered under a waiver kind of mean that they are based on a person's needs that are above and beyond what just regular medical assistance or health insurance would normally pay for. And again, like either a MnCHOICE assessor or an ongoing case manager would determine a person's eligibility for a waiver if the person has the needs for those services. And then the person goes on a specific type of medical assistance to be able to access a waiver. There's various types of waivers. I won't get into what those are called because it gets a little complicated, and because there may be changes coming up with that. But basically the case manager would determine what type of waiver a person is eligible for. A lot of the services are very similar under all the waivers anyways. Some of the different services that are available under a waiver are listed here. So individualized home supports. This is a service that can be provided either in a person's home or in the community to teach them skills in tons of different areas to be more independent. So it could be like household skills, cooking, learning how to take their medications, scheduling medical appointments, social skills, participating in the community, learning how to take the bus. Like, it's really endless what a person's goals could be under these supports. And there's lots of different community providers who provide that service, and a case manager would help a person connect with different providers. There's residential services, so like child or adult foster care, commonly referred to as like a group home. If a person has that need, that can be paid for with a waiver. And then there's day support services that are traditionally like Monday through Friday daytime hours. There's some variations there with certain providers, but that's mainly what it is. And a lot of them are pretty community based, and they focus a lot typically on job skills and vocational stuff. So a portion of day support services, a person might also use, well, the next service I'll talk about, employment services. So like a person might go to work for part of their day, and then the rest of the day participate in like social activities, recreational activities, and focusing on different skill areas that they want to work on. And then employment services could be, it could go from like, I've supported some people who have a job coach who checks in with them literally once a month to make sure everything's going well at their job, to see if they need assistance with anything related to their job. And then it goes up to one-on-one job coaching, where a person has a job coach with them at all times during their work shifts. That could be temporary, that could be lifelong for certain people. And they help people find jobs and maintain their job, and assist with transportation, with getting to and from work. Respite is another service that it's just meant to give primary caregivers a little bit of a break. Respite can be provided in a person's home, maybe the parents even home, and they just want someone else to step in as the caregiver for a while, or they need to leave the house. Respite providers can come in, and then there's a few providers locally who have respite facilities where a person could actually go like for a weekend or for a night, or just even during the day at times. And then environmental accessibility adaptations would be physical adaptations to a person's home or vehicle to make it more accessible to that person. Those can be paid for with a waiver. And then lastly, assistive technology. So any device or equipment that helps a person to communicate, just navigate their environment more independently, or perform activities of daily living more independently. Common things we pay for in this category would be like communication devices, iPads, equipment to like make a computer more user-friendly to a person maybe with a physical disability, like adaptive strollers or bikes, ways for people to get around, lots of different things there. So that's a cool thing. And then Megan's going to talk about CDCS.
So CDCS, Consumer Directed Community Supports, is a way that a family or individual can choose to use their waiver. And so a person still has to be on a waiver, but it makes things a little more flexible to personalize it to yourself. It can be hiring in, like I mentioned with those grants earlier, maybe picking some family friends that your child clicks with really well, and they're going to help them with some goals instead of it just being mom and dad all the time. But you have the ability to hire those people, make their schedule. What ends up happening as a person is screened through their MnCHOICES assessment, and a budget is then determined based on those needs. That budget is then given to a family that they can enlist someone like a treatment plan writer that would take the budget, meet with you, develop goals, and write up kind of how the money is going to all be spent. The only other professional support that has to come into play in that is a fiscal, someone that manages the money, taxes, all that kind of fun stuff to payroll with people. It can also be though your traditional services. Those tend to be a little bit trickier with CDCS just because they cost more money than if you're just hiring, Nancy down the street for $15 an hour than a company at maybe $30, $40 an hour. So it can make your money go real quick. but it has a lot of flexibility to it. In this is also different goods. You wouldn't really want to do home modifications. That's pretty expensive on a CDCS, but allowable services and goods might be, you know, you need some adaptive specific apps to go with your communication device, or you need a membership to, memberships are iffy, but memberships to a gym because weight has been a challenge. It can be just really, really flexible. I had a young gal that got a helium tank to help with her employment because she does balloon animals for kids, and she does that at like birthday parties and stuff. So we were able to get that through on her CDCS, which was really cool. I think we could probably move to the next one. I bounced all around there, but well, that was kind of it with CDCS. But yes, it's very, very flexible to build the way you'd prefer to do it. One really helpful piece to CDCS and why it's often accessed is it can be used as part of tuition costs to go to a post-secondary option for someone that has an intellectual disability, in conjunction with maybe vocational rehab services or other grants that might be out there to pool together to help cover tuition costs and the support that comes along with post-secondary. So I think we've had a good handful of people who utilize that option there. Otherwise, on a traditional waiver, there is not any help towards your tuition. All right, so now we have some contact information here for the MnCHOICE lines. Like I said, some counties kind of have a designated MnCHOICE team along with an individual phone number. Carleton County, St. Louis County both have that. When you get into the smaller counties, you're just calling Human Services and requesting a MnCHOICE assessment. I know within St. Louis County, it's really helpful when what your focus is to obtain Rule 185 case management. Folks like us, is that you're asking for that. I want to get a MnCHOICE assessment to see about Rule 185 case management or intellectual disabilities case management, that they really know the direction then that you're trying to take, and you know, might be putting on the proper lens for assessment then too.
And one more thing for contacts, on the Tuesday Talks website, there's a link to our St. Louis County Transition Case Management brochure. And if there were questions after this presentation on just really St. Louis County services, my and Megan and our other transition worker, Leslie's contact information is all on that brochure.
I think the one thing I wanted to try to hit on too, meeting with a lot of families, especially in the last couple of years of school, I think all these different services and groups can get really confusing and what their roles might be. And so one example I like to give families to help show the picture of how everything can work together is, say something like employment, that your child is going into their senior year of high school. They would really like to, they have great job skills, would really like to get a job afterwards, but that might require some support. They're practicing in school, work experience at school. That's one piece to it. Tends to be vocational rehab services come on board at that time. Might have some, should have some time with the student then that they're exploring and determining needs for employment support all the way up until they get hired for a job outside of school. But if that need for continued hands-on support exists, whether that's every day like Amy was saying, or even just a monthly check-in and problem solving occasionally, that moves into then county services, that for that support to continue, a person gets hooked up with us to then have that ongoing support. So they all kind of sound like they do the same thing, and they kind of all do the same thing, but it's a progression to follow. And so to have us all working together on that, it can be a pretty good support to people.
Mm-hmm. Well, and just different like funding streams at different points of a person's life. So, you know, a person in high school is accessing the school district services, and then vocational rehab comes on for like a short period of time in the middle, and then county services kind of can last forever if a person's eligible.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think that ends up being our job a lot of times, is helping families to dissect all of that and navigate where to go with it, because it can be a bit overwhelming. And so I know that's a role that I take on oftentimes with families. That's all the support they need, is just someone to interpret it all.
Right. Yeah, I think that's all we have.
Jess, anything else you think we should hit on for people here?
I was wondering, can you give a recommendation on when a parent should seek out county services? Like, I'm thinking I have a child in elementary or middle school. Is it better to seek out services then, or wait until they're in high school? And what would be the impact of waiting until they're older?
I mean, I would say the earlier the better. So elementary school is great. I mean, like I said, we have these services span all ages. So we have an entire unit of Rule 185 case managers who work just with kids under age 16. And really what that does is just gives us more time and opportunities to get to know the child. And so then, like, as transition case managers, when the person turns 16 and we get the case, we have all this background information from one of the child workers. And I was going to say something else. Yeah, I would just say the earlier the better. I mean, at least for sure by the time the person's starting high school is the best. Oh, that's what I was going to say. I said earlier on too, you know, if a family's like, well, we don't really need anything right now, they really just need to meet with us twice a year. And that could be like a 30-minute check-in to like see the child, meet with the parents, check in, do you need anything? If not, you know, like, we're not always in their business. It's a check-in. If you don't need anything, that's cool. But it just gives us that chance to build rapport and get to know the family. But I would say, you know, like, minimally by the time the person's reaching high school, everyone should have a case manager on board if you think they're eligible.
I guess at the latest by 16, really. You know, I mean, if you know there's going to be some need for supports later. But I've met several families too that just have us on, I always say, on the back burner, you know, and you do that MnCHOICE assessment to come in for county services, but if you're not receiving any kind of service outside of just case management, you don't have to keep redoing that assessment every year, not until a need changes and there might be a service needed, then we have to reassess. But I mean, you could go 5-6 years with no assessment even, and so you're just really basic check-ins. But I've had a couple families, that's how they've operated. And then something shifted in life, whether a parent passed away or a new diagnosis came on or what, that all of a sudden, oh, wait, life is crazy right now and we really could use some extra support. Well, then we just meet and we reassess and we just get going with it instead of trying to do that whole process at that time. So it can be really helpful in that moment, I think, when things change. But yeah, the sooner the better.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's hard when we get referrals when a student is like 18 years old and about to graduate, or 21 years old and about to graduate, because then we're scrambling to try to get them connected with services. And a lot of some programs have waiting lists. And right now, with the state of the world and COVID, there's really limited options, are more limited. So having more time to plan and really know what a family wants gives us the time to reach out to providers and get things lined up for a student. It makes it really hard when we get referrals when they're a lot older.
What would you guys find in terms of benefits of attending IEP meetings, or how do you find out that the individual you're working with has an IEP meeting?
I think between me and Amy and Leslie's our other transition one in our group, I think we've developed a lot of rapport with teachers. And so a lot of them will reach out to us and just ask. But I find oftentimes even more so when there's difficulties with getting your needs met at school. I think we're utilized even more as an advocate with the individual and their families to just kind of, you know, can you explain why we're doing this instead of this, or bringing in additional advocacy supports if things aren't working right. And so really just that extra advocate for the individual. But then moving forward, I think just that partnership with everyone of planning for after that, we're there, we know what's going on. If someone's going to need some kind of county services to take over, that we kind of know the progression behind it and we're a part of it in planning, so things aren't getting missed and people don't start a job then have to wait 6 months before all of a sudden we can get some kind of service in place to take over, or, you know, so just being there, knowing the needs and knowing everybody involved in your team, I think makes a team work way better.
Yeah, I've had multiple parents say that they just appreciate having someone other than, like, a lot of times it's just them and then all people from like the school district or the education lens. And having just someone else, like Megan used the word advocate, someone else just being there, like another set of ears to listen and probably ask the same questions that the parent might have, but is feeling really overwhelmed because I'm not an expert in all the education stuff either. So I'll ask, you know, just helping in like asking questions and being an advocate with the family, I think feels kind of nice for parents.
Okay, I think we can wrap up then. Thank you both for attending and presenting today.